Welcome to the Midlife Pilot podcast. We are glad you're with us. What is it like to become a pilot in your 40s and 50s? The challenges are unique for those of us in midlife, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences of being a midlife pilot. Join the Midlife Pilot community and listen in every week. We are not CFIs or particularly intelligent, so if you want to learn how to fly, talk to anyone else other than the hosts of a podcast. Even this intro was too challenging for us, and we used a robot to do it. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello and welcome to the Midlife Pilot podcast, where we share the experiences and challenges of flying in midlife. Whether you're a seasoned pilot, training for a rating, or just thinking about getting your started in aviation, we like to think of the podcast as your aviation companion and your weekly dose of aviation inspiration. Tonight's episode, we're going to be going down the creativity road in midlifers, being creative. My name is Ben, and I am a pilot with an IFR rating and a commercial certificate based in the metro Atlanta rainy area. I fly an airplane. It's a Cessna 182 called a Beast, as opposed to flying other types of objects. Joining me tonight is always, it's my friend. He's a private pilot in Nashville, which is home of the Bachelorette Super Charlie. He flies a Cherokee 180 named Lucy. Good evening, sir. Brian Siskin.
What's up? Every time you say private pilot, I always think it almost sounds like a pilot that wants to be discreet about the fact that he's a pilot, which is just not even an existing thing. So anyway, every time you say that, I kind of crack up.
I kind of say it in the manner of like your private, like, you know, you have your private plane, you have your private house, you have your, you know. Also joining us tonight, as always, it's our sport pilot extraordinaire. He's based in Portlandia. He flies a flight design CTLS. We like to call it the egg. It's our friend and everybody's friend, Ted. How you doing, sir?
Hey there. I'm good. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you here.
I landed yesterday and it was 100 degrees at 5 p.m. So I've caught up to the rest of the country on weather.
Welcome.
And now it's in the mid 80s and raining for the next 6 months for us. Feels like we're in the wet season. You know what? We got a special guest with us tonight. His name is Lien. He is also known as the Banjo Pilot. He's based out of Minneapolis. He's in a club with 6 low-wing airplanes, but we will not hold that against him. Tim, good evening. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to having a conversation tonight.
Very good. Now, we told everybody else their ratings. Can you share which ratings certs you have?
I'm a private pilot, and I'm paused on working on my instrument rating because my CFI moved to the Congo to go fly caravans out there. So I can't hold it against him, but if you know any good double I's in the area, I need to get going again.
Well, we've got a lot of folks in the community up that way. I'm sure we can come up with some suggestions for you and totally get it. So tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about the creative minds of midlifers. Is that a fair assessment, Brian?
Yeah, just the link between creativity, the observed phenomena of the link between creativity and midlife pilots, because we have a whole creativity channel in our Discord.
Yeah.
And you see, and this doesn't mean everybody's some deep artist. It just means that we have so many makers and creatives, and there's so many interesting things going on. And we just thought we should devote an episode to talking about that, because I think there's some interesting correlations to just what it is to be a pilot and creativity and being an artist or a creative or a maker. And that's why we wanted to have Tim, to have you on, Tim, is because you're sort of a multifaceted artist and maker and obviously a pilot, even though your CFI abandoned you. And so
we won't read into that at all.
I think it's gonna be a really cool topic. I hope that people stick around for it, because a lot of people say I'm not creative, and that's wrong. Every pilot is creative somehow.
So, you know, we can, I would love to do a personal flying recap. I got to tell you, I haven't been in the plane. Well, I went up as a safety pilot. I am flying this week. So there's not a whole lot much going on there, but What do we decide? Are we going to go straight into the belly scrubbing and then talk about creativity, or do we want to hit some more flying recap between you guys?
Well, my recap is not very much because I haven't flown, but I'll tell you one thing, and this aligns with what Tim was talking about, which is I've been back and forth, pausing, starting, chipping away, doing whatever I can possibly do to get my instrument rating done. And this is a long, woeful, painful topic that we keep returning to for at least me. But one thing that I did this week and put some time into, thanks to our friend of the show, Erica Gilbert and Gilbert Aviation. She's got a great IFR course that's an 8-week live video class course that prepares, it'll give you the endorsement for the written and, a little bit of a collaborative environment, I think would do me some good. I think that what was stopping me was being in my own head too much. And just not having when you're diving out to ask people questions and then kind of going back in, you kind of lose track and you lose momentum. And so, and I know that there's others in the community that are joining in this next session that starts up on, I don't know, a date soon. And so anyway, check out gilbertaviation.com. We always want to give her a plug because she's been kind to us. And I think that she's helping some people out to get in that class. So if you're even on the edge of it, please jump in. And if I'll be able to tell you in 8 weeks, if it got me through to actually pass, because my problem is I'm a creative, I'm an artist, my brain, the instrument coursework is the opposite of whatever's required to be an artist, I think. I mean, some people might argue that. We'll get into that later, but that's my flying recap is that I'm buckling down on getting my instrument written done by early November, mid-November, and then that'll be setting the clock, and honestly, I've chipped away at some of the requirements for sure. I mean, so I'm not that far really.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Ted posted a couple of videos and we won't dwell on this too long, but it was funny to me. Go check out his YouTube channel, Fly Sport. Ted, in the very first one that I saw.
Well, the other one isn't public. So
yeah. The one that I saw that was public is how you make this, you're flying amongst these incredible mountains.
Yeah.
And it's just absolutely good. And then he says, or he does a voiceover and he says, I happen to notice this over here. And I thought it was really pretty. And I'm thinking, everywhere you are is very, very pretty. If you're noticing something different, then it must be the Garden of Eden. I don't know, but it was quite spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah. It was some of the, I don't know, most interesting flying I've done to fly right between two mountains and over a lake, and
the winds weren't too bad, I'm assuming.
No, otherwise I wouldn't have been there. But it was very much reach out and touch it. And yeah, there's some great moments of staring at a wall of a mountain before I turn into it, sort of views. So it was a great weekend of flying. I was just doing stamp collection stuff, and but I had to be careful because it's hot and I was going up in the mountains, and so I reordered where I landed first, so that I got the riskiest flights done, or riskiest landings done first. But it was still like tailwind, downhill, grass, high density altitude. So it's taken a lot of learning to get to the point that I can navigate that and understand the risks and handle it. So
nice.
There's also the idea that you want to stay close to the edge. When you're in that canyon, it's so tempting to try to equidistantly space yourself, but that's typically not what you should be doing. Or, there's a lot of things that are interesting about that kind of flying you were doing that I've only touched on. That's really, it was stunning stuff, man. Your green screen is pro quality.
Yeah. I do have one more question. So here in the Southeast, we have these things. They don't have transponders on them, but they're called turkey vultures.
Oh, geez.
They're slightly smaller than the egg, but not much smaller. And you can be co-altitude with them at 3,000, even 4,000 feet. Now, I know you're at a much higher elevation, but is that, do you get any large birds in the air? I mean, is that something you have to keep your eye out for?
We get eagles and some hawks. They seem to be around airports more than anything else. So,
but not like in the out. So when you're out there looking around, you're out there in the mountains. You don't probably have very much out there, do you?
There was actually one not far off from when I recorded that video where it's like, oh, bird, let me duck to avoid that one.
So it does exist out there then.
Yeah. Yeah. I will tell you, I wasn't going in it anyway, but there's a canyon, and it was like, hey, be careful. There's cables horizontal and vertical across this canyon. And I went back home and looked it up and figured out why. It's a low frequency radio transmission. So it's a mile across the canyon and then vertically a mile. And it's a whole bunch of lines like that. It's like, oh, I do not want to fly into that. It's like flying into a spider web. So I was very curious what it was. I was happy to figure that out. So, yeah.
Not the hard way, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You figured it out the easy way.
Have you done any flying last week, Tim?
I did get a interesting flight, and it's nice when you have a mission, right? And my mission last week was my mom is a very avid quilter, and we're talking like she's doing it 10 to 12 hours a day.
Feeling the pressure of this already, by the way, Tim.
Oh, I know.
This is intense.
This is my whole life.
Okay.
So she enters her quilts in the state fair, the Minnesota State Fair. If you haven't been, biggest state fair in the country. She enters a few of her quilts every year, but she lives in southern Minnesota, about an hour and a half drive from the Twin Cities where I am. So I just flew down to little farmland, Waseca, Minnesota, and picked up her quilts. Wove my way into the pattern with some crop dusters and grabbed her quilts and then flew back home. So it was a fun mission. I got my stamp while I was there too, but it's nice to have something else in the plane when you come home.
That's a cool mission. Yeah.
I like how you weave yourself into the pattern.
I got that too.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. Go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
No, I was just thinking from the movie The Blues Brothers, who were on a mission from God. Tim is on a mission from Mom.
Yeah.
So, hey, what do we say? We get to the belly scrubbing and
yeah, we got a lot to get into. So I'm just going to do this as much like the old FedEx commercial as humanly possible. All right, you guys timing me? All right, here we go. We're grateful for you all making this the best pilot community we know of, a positive space where we share everything from training experiences, share personal minimums, tackle ownership challenges, review flight plans, and best of all, make new aviation friends. Connect with us, join our Patreon community from $1 a month, or do a one-time annual Patreon, 25 cents per episode. Access exclusive content, including check ride debriefs, killing zone conversations, and more. 10% supports Freedom Aviation Network's anti-human trafficking efforts. Watch us live on YouTube, Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern. Share your stories, Midlife Pilot Podcast @gmail.com. We read all the messages. You might hear yours on the show. For everything Midlife Pilot Podcast, community feedback, merch, and more, visit midlifepilotpodcast.com.
And leave a 5-star review.
Excellent.
So, Ted, a few Patreons joiners this week.
Yeah, let me go through our little community section. I want to welcome the new people in our Patreon this week. At the Hershey Bar level, we have Anthony C., Jeff S., and Justin G. So welcome all you for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wrote down a couple of notes of things that have been going on in Discord. I've really liked turning this into kind of the accomplishments section of the podcast. So Boo Radley, who is one of our Australian friends, completed his long solo cross country, 4.1 hours on the Hobbs. Mine was actually about 4 as well. He said, while the flight wasn't perfect, can you believe I started the engine before I put the seatbelt on? If that's the worst you're doing is starting the engine without your seatbelt, you're fine. At least I think you are. Barley Dog took his wife for her first flight in his new RV-14 that he finished building. Moat passed their private check ride.
Yes. Congrats.
There was some good conversation there about taking up, speaking of mom and quilts, about taking up your parents and, kind of the first time that you take your parent up in the air, and it might be their first time in a small plane. I thought that was cool. The last thing that I want to mention was Toby Kai upgraded his KX155 with that, fading LED display that everybody has in the old planes. And it slid in a KX200, which is just a drop-in replacement for the old 155, and has a magic upgraded radio. and it looks really beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's in the avionics channel. I'm just happy because there's this, there's a great upgrade path. It's not like, well, $10,000 of work under your panel to get a new radio. So
can I add something real quick about taking your parents up?
Yeah.
There's a part of me that is so envious of people that can do that, because there's a lot of us that are not able to do that for any number of reasons. I mean, my mother is still alive, but she's not able enough, to do it. My dad's not around. So I think that it'd be interesting to hear from people about creative ways that you, for instance, I took up my dad's ashes, a little vial of my dad's ashes for a ride.
I spread a bunch that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So, sometimes it's, we've talked about comparison a lot, and how that's sort of the thief of joy a lot of times in aviation, because everybody's getting their ratings and doing all this cool stuff. And Ted's got a green screen in his hangar and flying in all these impossible places that no human should be able to fly, but he does somehow, because he's got a green screen. But anyway, I think that there's just something to be said for when you see things where you're kind of envious of other people being able to have certain aviation experiences. It's sort of an invitation to be creative and come up with your own ways to have some facsimile perhaps of those experiences, whether symbolic or otherwise, which leads us into our main topic tonight. Ben, do you want to say it, or do you want me to say it?
No, you go ahead. I mean, it was a perfect segue. So,
okay. By the way, that was pretty good, right?
That was pretty impressive. I'm trying to figure out what you need me for here.
Yeah. Well, what we're going to do before we get into anything, we're actually going to talk to Ted, because Ted, we have been talking a lot about this week. And Ted, I think you have a good stage setting, context setting point of view for this that I think people appreciate.
So I have this kind of spiel in my head. I call it a rant, but it's not really. But it's the origins of the Midlife Pilot podcast is all about YouTube and creativity. OG Chris, of course, created his YouTube channel and then added a word to the end of it and became the podcast. Met Brian through doing the same sort of efforts. But early on, it was all YouTube based. And that's why we basically only live stream on YouTube is that's our origins, right? We don't come from Facebook or somewhere like that. It tends to be all there. And in those early few dozen episodes, it was a lot of basically YouTube creatives at all levels, not high end, right? But just people that are putting out garbage videos too. And so early on, this community kind of formed from this kind of creative basis. And we still have that origin in there. But I think that we kind of collect people that are a little bit more creative. I think that pilots generally are probably a little bit more in that type, but especially this podcast. And I really appreciate seeing everybody's videos when they come up and all the work that people do. And I saw that Mark Windlegeek just put something up. Like, it's great. This is what we're about, right? Is sharing it with others, and it's a lot cheaper to watch video than it is to go fly your plane. So that's my thing about this podcast being very creative and being based around YouTubers.
Yes, and so clearly there's some link there. Whether we thought about having some sort of a neurologist or somebody on that could map the brain patterns and show us all the correlations, but we instead just did the next best thing, which is to get somebody that plays the banjo and then and just kind of see where it goes. So Tim, Lien, Banjo Pilot, just want to welcome you to the podcast. Thanks for being on with us this evening.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, this topic lands really close to home for me because I think going back to, like you said, with Chris, the OG, being that he has such ties to music too, like that's where kind of an early, for me, where that early connection was, where it was like, oh, I see more of me in this than maybe I do elsewhere out there on the internet.
Yeah. And a lot of the early conversations I had when I was getting to know Chris, that's mostly what we were talking about, just nerding out on audio engineering things. And I know that you have that component to your music nerdery as well, because I've heard you mention that you do front of house for various things and all that.
Yeah.
So ultimately though, I think where the curiosity is, if I had an end game for this, I just want people to that don't think that they're creative. One Dull Geek doesn't think that he's creative. He's so creative. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he gives, it's almost like he's so creative that he doesn't realize that he's creative. And I think there's a lot of other people that are like that. And if creativity is sort of at the essence of what brought a lot of this together to be the germination for what became this community to begin with anyway, then why not try to revive that a little bit and just sort of point this back at people and say, look, don't feel that being creative is having a jewelry page on Etsy or whatever. You know what I mean? Like this is more than that. By the way, if you have a jewelry page on Etsy, that's great. I don't mean that to be reductive, mostly. No, I'm just kidding.
You just called somebody out there.
No. But you know what I'm saying? Like you don't have to be a fine art painter, right? You can be a maker. You can be a problem solver. Creativity manifests in a lot of different ways. So I'm here just saying we should be exploring the link between creativity and Midlife Pilot. So when it comes to that intersection of art, music, creativity, Tim, what do you think is the reasoning or the underpinnings of why so many pilots are also creatives, whether they realize it or not?
I can only speak from my own place on this, but if I examine myself and the pieces of me that are the creative part and the pieces of me that maybe brought me to aviation as well, I think it's it's like a pursuit of something great. This thing at the end of all this work, you're going to be able to see this new world, right? If you're a musician, you can't explain to a non-musician what it's like to play in a band in front of a group of people. You can't explain that. But it's a lot of work to get there. And when you get there, you're like, yes, this is so great. And I think it's a similar mindset, or maybe like it's what we thrive on or crave, is that we want to do really hard work on things that we know have a big payoff, or kind of that rarefied air. It gets you to a place that you see things that others don't see things. And I think creativity, whether it's in art, music, or, all the other ways you can be creative, it's that you want to put in the work. You don't want that easy payoff because, there's something really, really cool at the end of it.
I'm in a different position than my friends here on the podcast. I feel like I have a inner creative person inside me, and he just hasn't figured out exactly where to explore that creativeness. It has absolutely, though, as somebody who is not creative, it is absolutely punched me in the nose seeing this common tie with so many of our supporters and our listeners of the podcast. Tim, your AeroGlass thing it's my favorite thing that I have. Our friend Chris C up in Syracuse, he's sent us some little keychains that he bought a laser printer. There's been just so many different ways that we've seen the creativity. I'm still trying to figure out where that is with me. I think the most creative output that I had was about 20 years ago when I was doing a lot of fly fishing, and I was bought a vise, and I was tying flies for everybody, and trying to come up with new patterns. And while that's not quite maybe flying related, it is fly fishing, I guess you could tie it together that way. But that was kind of my outlet. I've fallen away from that, but I'm curious for you, and maybe we can put this out to folks in the chat. Is it tied together with your playing music and then your artistic side or your engineering side where you're building out these things?
Well, hang on. Let me interrupt real quick, because Ben he's the jewelry artist. He has a diamond in the rough every once in a while. I'm going to link in the show notes his great YouTube video. He doesn't have many. When he does, they're great.
All right. Well, thank you.
And I mean, again, this isn't like you put out a video a week, therefore you're creative, or vice versa. So
right. That's a good call out. And for me, putting out a video is like giving birth to a baby. It takes 9 months for it to gestate, and then I finally get it out. But
more than 2 is enough. Yeah.
So, but I am curious if there's a tie for you in the artistic side that's not music and the music, and quite frankly, tying the flying into that. Do you find a commonality there?
But I think the commonality is kind of like we were saying, but it's the in all of these things, they're an unmasterable thing. You're never perfect. You could be the only person that's ever reached X number of experience in any of these things, whether it's music or art or flying or creating or making electronic stuff. You can still improve. You can still be better. And I think for me, that's you want to find those missions that are, I'm never going to be done with this. I can keep growing. I know that there's a path in front of me that goes on forever and ever, and I can fixate on it. I can obsess about it. And it's, again, it's because, the payoff is so great that it's worth putting that in. And you find those things that you can just invest such huge pieces of yourself into. They become part of you, So I think that's kind of the tie that I see, at least for myself. It's just, I find those things that I can glom onto and take way too far and be among a group of people who are cool with me obsessing about it, and we'll talk about it all day.
Well, I just think that it's fascinating for me, having been a drummer for a long time and obviously produced a lot of music and worked in music a lot in my life and been around a lot of music. And the parallels of aviation to music to me are profound. And here's an example too. There's, like, for me, when I saw one of my favorite drummers of all time is Tony Williams. He played with Miles Davis when he was 16. He's one of the best that ever lived. And I saw him many moons ago in a time called the 90s. I saw him do a drum clinic, and there was one point where he just started out this drum clinic. People were there to see this expert do this thing, right? And when he started out to play, he was just playing a double stroke roll, which is just, for anybody who doesn't know, it's just a very simple rudiment, the most simple possible rudiment you could ever play possibly on a snare drum besides a single stroke roll. And it's just a nice, even roll. And he did that. He started, the whole room's full of anticipation, and they're watching him, and he's just playing, and he's doing it at exactly the same volume, perfectly evenly. And he's doing this for 1 minute, 2 minutes. And then it, slowly dynamically built and went on to their, him doing more solo things and whatever. But it was so impacting to me because when you see an absolute proven master of all masters focusing on such rudimentary things, unabashedly focused on the rudiments, and then when you think about what we're doing as pilots, flying in the pattern, we're flying the same pattern that Chuck Yeager flew in, or, whatever. It's like a lot of the things that are happening, we're flying the same airplanes that folks trained in and a lot of people have flown that are masters of their craft. And so I find when you're aware of those differences, they're very subtle. It's like, Ben, when I first flew with you, and I did not have many hours at the time, it wasn't anything specific that I could point to. It was just, there was this fluidity of motion and oneness with what you were doing. And, I have started a plane before. I have taxied a plane before. I have done a run up before. I have gone out on the runway. I've taken off. I've done, you were not doing anything that I hadn't done myself successfully. But the gulf between where I was doing the exact same thing and where you were was so palpable and clear to me that, even though the checkpoints of the activity were all exactly the same and the outcomes generally were all the same, there was just this smoothness and fluidity and expert nature to what you were doing that was something that I really wanted for myself and that I made a note of. And then that became sort of a constellation of something that I've been sort of aspiring to, ever since. And so I find that music is the same way, and I find that flying is the same way in that respect. Tim, do you have anything that you've seen that feels like just a direct correlation to the practice and the discipline of learning, music or going back to fundamentals?
I do see a certain amount of myself in all of that. And for me, I hear what you're saying for all of it. And it goes right to me I think of what I call the flow state. I'm sure it's not something I came up with, but when I find those things that I can get into that flow state in, that's when I know that's one of those things that I can express myself through. So aviation, that's absolutely one of them. Is you say it all the time, Brian, it's air therapy. You get up there and it's like you're in a different world. You're in a space by yourself and it's, this beautiful thing. I get the same playing music. You get into that flow state. Hours can go by and it feels like minutes and you just get to live in that space. And similar with working on MyAeroGlass, like when I started working on this, and by the way, a lot of this, if you were at the Big Texas Send, most of this started because of the Big Texas Send. I brought a few of these for these guys to check out and everyone was like, these are so great. So a little bit of encouragement from all of you. And I went into my garage and I worked for hours and hours and hours and hours in a flow state and enjoyed every minute of it. But it's I got to just buckle down and obsess on something and enjoy the process more so than just like you achieve the end goal. And it's finding those things that you can just love the process of what you're doing. And that's the whole goal of it, is just to be in it.
I want to hear more about MyAeroGlass, but staying on the music topic, I've got to hit Zach P's comment here. He said, flying is doing 100 things at once. Playing music in a band or orchestra is not that different. Listening, processing, and taking action on the things surrounding you. I appreciate that. And I am not musically talented. I apparently have some other talents, but I understand that idea and that taking in so many inputs and negotiating that and getting somewhere with it. Ben?
Yeah, I want to get to the AeroGlass project here in a minute, but I happen to know from meeting you at the Big Texas Send, you are, correct me if I'm wrong, you're an engineer by trade. Is that correct?
Not per se. I mean, as a hobby, I would say that's where my brain goes, and I should have absolutely gone to school for that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of where I was going with it.
Yeah. My dad's a RF engineer, so I spent my childhood soldering things and taking things apart.
It's interesting to me how different creatives approach their different mediums and their different arts, and somebody with more of an engineering background or a mindset, not a background, but a mindset. And actually, I kind of consider myself somewhat of, trying to pick things apart. And I felt like that's kind of helped me back. But I think I'm blown away by the AeroGlass and how you've kind of channeled some of that engineering mindset into something artistic, as well as launching into that. Can you tell us a little about how you went about designing this and maybe give us some background and how it influenced the product development?
Yeah.
First, this is an audio podcast, so let's describe
Wait a minute, this is audio? The people aren't watching.
I know, yeah. So let's describe what we're talking about first. Do you want to do that, Tim?
Sure. Yeah. So MyAeroGlass the simplest description, it's a wooden base with a slot in it that has a row of LEDs and a clear acrylic plate that sits within that vertically with a laser engraved image. Typically I'm doing like an airport diagram and, the plan view of an airplane, maybe the name of the pilot, an N number. So it's kind of a way to commemorate your airport, your airplane, your achievements, things like that. So the origins of it, actually going back to my CFI that abandoned me to go fly caravans in the Congo, he's to blame. It's actually his wife is to blame. I had made a METAR map similar to some of the ones that are behind you guys. And I was like, hey, I'll trade you this METAR map for some, flight instruction time. And he goes, I have to ask my wife. So he comes back the next day and he's like, she thinks they're ugly.
That's awesome.
So the gears in my head are turning, of course, immediately. I'm like, first of all, how dare you say something like that is ugly? But then okay, well, that's a problem. We all want our aviation stuff all over our houses, but it can't be maybe the sectional charts that we're all looking at. So how do we make something that's a little less obtrusive, something that'll fit into the home a little bit? And then this just kind of started percolating in my brain out of that. And a threw together some of the parts from one of the METAR maps I was making. And I have a little hobby CNC machine, and I threw them in a base, and you can probably go back in the Discord and see some really early photos of it.
Yeah.
It was rough, but it worked. And it was, it was you guys that all were so encouraging that kind of gave me that maybe other people would have interest in this. And Ben, actually, I'll blame you maybe more than anyone, because I remember sitting at the Tiki Bar at the Big Texas Send, and you had yours and you just got it connected, I think, in the hotel. And you said, man, if you can figure out how to make these, you just got to start thinking about what airplane you're going to buy next. And I do
remember that, actually.
Challenge accepted, Ben.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
So be the first passenger in the new airplane, by the way.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
By the way, just so we've kind of glossed over the idea or the key functionality here of it, other than just being beautiful, is that it actually lights up the color of the flight category of weather. And there's I see mine here. I can tell when the winds pick up, because there'll be there's this kind of a dynamic wind animation thing that happens. That's really cool. So you can see when the winds, well, I guess it's like after they get past 10 knots, I think it is. Is that right?
Over 10 knots, it starts to chase a white LED, and then that's linear based on wind speed. So as the wind speeds up, that chases faster. So I'm trying to communicate as much information about current conditions as I can in a way that's not right in your face. It's kind of if you know, and you can understand what you're seeing if you know what it's showing, but it's not like you have to, look at a big sectional chart and figure out what's going on. It's art first, and it's functional art,
So right. One of the points I just want to make, driving this back towards creativity, is, you're talking about the story of making these. It's not unlike your music pursuits or anything else. Everybody picks up, when you picked up a banjo, you were terrible at it, and then you got better. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe you were a prodigy and it just worked out immediately.
or maybe I'm still really bad.
That's right. Yeah. There's a lot of options here. But flying, I've never felt more hapless in my entire life than when I first started flying. I really thought, like many of us, oh man, in my head, I've got all of this together. I know exactly how this works. Right. I understand all the controls and the aerodynamics, and this is going to be a breeze. I've got really good coordination, and, hey, I'm a drummer. I've got, limb independence, and I can do all that stuff. So let's go, man. And then realize, oh, I can't even taxi, I'm a mess or whatever. So to start so simple. So with the project you're talking about, I love that you basically saw, you had a sort of an inspiration to do something. You reconstituted existing things to create something that was a prototype for something new. And then, and that's the sort of not being afraid to suck kind of thing. You know what I mean? Which is what keeps us, I think, from a lot of creative endeavors, is just being afraid of being bad at it. I think a lot of us deluded ourselves getting into flying, that we just thought we'd be good at it. And then by the time you'd already paid for it, it's like, well, then I got to get good for this, good at this. So, but anyway, so I find it interesting, the parallel between the experience of having an idea, prototyping, iterating something, and growing it to something that is actually answering to a problem. And then now you've got something that, I'm so much more aware of the weather now, because when I'm not flying, I kind of know what the patterns are of the weather, what the weather's doing, and how things might be fluctuating or not. And so sometimes it's not just about when you're flying, right? So I think it's just a really cool thing that you've done, but it's born of not being afraid to be creative and putting together a shoddy prototype and then iterating. It's great.
Yeah. Well, and I do think part of it is maybe the personality type of us midlife pilots is we see those things similar to flying, just like you were saying, Brian, where your first time up there, you're like, I'm going to get this. And it's a struggle. We, rather than walking away from it, we're like, okay, like I said to Ben, challenge accepted. This is fine. I've encountered a hard thing and I'm not going to be beat by it. I'm excited to get good at it. And that's a lot of what all this is we're talking about, is we want those challenges and we, take them head on.
I've got to say though, a lot of these things are difficult. And I think one of the favorite sayings I like is we chose this not because it was easy, but because we thought it was easy. And, I don't know. I don't know if this is the case with you, Tim, but I'll do these little side obsessions and see where they take me. And it's not, oh, I'm trying to make a business out of this. It's, I want to solve a problem for myself, or I want to play with this or whatever. And sometimes those lead to something that, you share a special mount with Wendell Geek, because you made a few of them. Sometimes it never leaves my house, right? Like there's the levels of that, of all these little things that you play with.
And that's why the community, any community is important, but this community especially, because it gives us a place that we can share those things. We don't necessarily always have places like that, where a lot of things might just fall away because you don't have someone to say, hey, check out this thing I made, So having a group of people, similar interests, similar, mindset, that you can throw little things out there, maybe some of those do catch. And if it weren't for me having the Midlife Pilot podcast to bounce that off of, it probably wouldn't have done anything either. So it's all thanks to the people you surround yourself with to an extent.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point, and it kind of segues into my next question. And I wanted to hit on two comments, actually. Our friend Douglas in the chat says, this audience can appreciate the statement, hobby CNC machine. and that kind of gets to kind of my point, in that it's kind of a blessing and a curse that we've attained an age, experience level, where we have the capabilities to get a hobby CNC and have the capacity to be able to use it all. I'm curious, would you see yourself doing this 15 years ago, Tim?
No, I don't think so. It's actually even just recently that I've maybe let that voice in the back of my head that's saying, like, go find your own thing. I finally started listening to it. I was doing the corporate grind for the longest time, and it's so much of being part of the aviation community and seeing the opportunities in it and all of that. That's what kind of shook me and said, like, you find something to do in the stuff that you love. And that really just kind of opened maybe my mind to start finding something like this to do.
And that was kind of the point. I wanted to hit one other comment from TWH Tango Whiskey Hotel Kurt. He said, getting my pilot's license changed my life. Flying, in quotes, felt like an impossible goal. I worked for someone that was a pilot and convinced me to take lessons. After I got PPL, I figured I could do anything. And I think that's a great connection there. I think all of us had that sense of, holy cow, I can't believe I just did that. Now I can go take on anything. I mean, it's very well taken. But it kind of feels like the same thing that you're going through now. You've gone through this stuff, and now you've got this awesome idea. Let's get this out to the world and let them take a look at it.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, by the way, I just have to interrupt here and say, this is all good and fine, but, and we, people that are watching this can see that I've got one behind me here. Ted's got one behind him. We got the podcast logo on it. Ted's VFR, clearly. I'm VFR over here. Ben, yours is off screen, but yours is right there. But I don't know. There's something, the people in the chat here can see this. Behind you, Tim, there's one that looks like Stonehenge. Colossal. Compared to what looks like what we have. So how come you're holding out on the, what's happening there?
So that's brand new. It's kind of an accident, actually. I was, throwing some stuff together and some content together for the website, and needed something out there that was a little bit more eye-catching, a little bigger, more impressive. Still thinking like, these the 6x6 ones, that's still going to be the sweet spot. And I made one of these and I took some pictures of it, and then I was just like, I almost wish I hadn't made it because it's so much cooler. But it does 4 airports. So it's 1 unit, 1 base, 4 different slots. And then the plates are about 11 inches tall instead of 6.
Oh, geez.
So it gives you, a bigger canvas. And of course, when we're talking about creative, it's nice to have more space to do stuff. So I have, on this one, I have it's a Piper M500 that I have across all 4 plates. And then I have 4 airports represented under each one. So
And that's the one on your website that's 123 Alpha Bravo.
Correct.
That's where those pictures come from. So the website is, and it launched today, I hear, is MyAeroGlass, MyAero glass.com.
Yep.
And yeah, it's been interesting seeing it's been really cool seeing the evolution of this and not just, this is designed for us nerds that have a home airport that want to see the weather, but this is something that someone would buy as a gift. Like, I have 3 t-shirts with the egg on it because people like, what do I buy Ted? His partner told me what plane he flies. And so now, so they independently have bought me t-shirts as gifts. And, so I put in that same category of, we've got a aviation nerd. What is it that they'd benefit from?
And we want it all. That's the thing, is any aviation gift is a good gift.
Man.
So we'll take it all.
But here's the great thing, though. And it's the origin story, really, if you could weave this into the website, maybe, but how your CFI's wife didn't like it. So you had to make something that pleased her. I freaking love that. And I can tell you, there's going to be so many people out there that can identify with. I've got a huge METAR map behind me that's we're got to get fixed, but I could take my AeroGlass and I could put it anywhere in the house I want to because my wife loves it. She thinks it's great. It's a lot of us midlifers are just trying to make sure we're keeping our significant others happy with the expensive hobbies.
I will say, from experience, it is a double-edged sword because my partner's dad, he's a pilot, and I go flying with him out in the Denver area a lot. So he has one of the early ones from way back when, and when his wife walks by his office and sees it and sees that it's green, the way she explained it to me, it's like finding out that your husband has a mistress because she sees it green and she's like, he's going to go to the hangar.
Yeah.
He's leaving today.
Well, I've got to say my map is behind me and my AeroGlass is behind me, which means I never look at them, except it means I look at them all the time because of when I'm in my remote job and I'm always on video conferences. I'm always looking at that. It's like, weather's not great at the coast today. And there's a meeting going on. And, so yeah, it's the same thing. It's like, we put these in places that we can see them because it is so important to us. Zach, not to be confused with Zach P, said he has one and loves it. Barry, speaking of people who, I'm going to talk about that for a sec, but Barry, Checkmate Barry says, I love my AeroGlass. So Barry is a great example of that. Of this whole thing because he communicated with the people that make aviation checklists because he wanted a very custom modern version of it. And they said, why don't you just buy the company? So Barry has turned his hobby into a larger hobby and a business as well. And it's again, the same thing, right? It's like, we're surrounded by people that are like, yeah, checklists are important, and it's like, so I really appreciate that about Barry. And also, the first time Barry reached out was after a podcast where I talked about when you just have one GoPro sitting behind you facing forward and you put a YouTube video out of that it looks like a security camera. And he just emailed me. He's like, I love that. That's so accurate for the one GoPro view of flying. So, he loves it in the background for video calls as well. Yeah.
Well, I think, there's something to be said for being a problem solver, which I think is really what creativity is all about, is just you see a gulf between two existing states that you just want to connect, or you see the power of combining one thing and another thing to create something that is then new. I think that when people are pursuing ratings and trying to build time, I think that one of the things we've talked about a lot on the podcast is how, as we are building time and pursuant to things, we can also have periods of complacency, or maybe where we're not applying our best selves at all times. Do you find that you have, I'm going to try to ask this question in a way that makes sense. I have realized for myself that being an artist and a creative my whole life, and then all of a sudden being a pilot, I now have this almost like a matrix that I can now apply over this existing, otherwise kind of weird, amorphous cauldron of creativity that sometimes I can direct at functional benefits or to solve a problem or whatever. But a lot of the time it's kind of wandering and it's not organized or it's not prioritized. And there's something about the training, almost like in a military sense of, aviate, navigate, communicate, checklists, getting your S together. You know what I mean? And there's something about that with the stakes of aviation, then backwards, sort of applied to creativity, has given me a new lease on creativity because I've got a new framework of perhaps a discipline around it. Do you have any experience like that?
I 100% agree, especially in the music side of things. Going from, music where it had been for much of my life, it was a creative outlet. It was just express yourself. It's not necessarily accomplishing much, which that's totally okay with a lot of creative endeavors. But to a certain extent, you're kind of just spinning in a circle. When I went through the process of ground school and training and going through the check rides, and like you're saying, you start to put this, like, here's a framework. If you do this, this, and this, and you stick to this process, you can shape those efforts into, this. And I've noticed significant changes in how I practice music, how I bring that to the group when we're playing together or rehearsing together. And it's just like, it's accelerated all of those things because I approach them kind of with more of that methodical mindset that really I didn't have until I was, really digging into aviation.
So now that all your band members hate you, when you like, oh, here comes the banjo or you play fiddle, right? I mean, in the band you're in now, is that right?
I play fiddle in this band. Yeah.
Yeah. So, fiddle player, are you talking about checklists again? And,
they just turn off my mic whenever I start talking about.
I have to, claim some origins, which is as soon as you say fiddle and banjo, I just think if you're going to play in Texas, you got to have a fiddle in the band. And if anybody recognizes that reference, I'm sorry. But yeah, Barry was saying it just as Tim was talking. It's just aviation's all about structure. Structure is important to be successful at all endeavors. And that's what I love about somebody like Brian, which is there's a lot of structure and but that enables the creativity. And it's such a amazing difference. To some of us, at least, it's like, well, the structure means that you're not creative. It's like, no, it's within that. I've got to say fairly early on, Brian, you did a here's how I use DaVinci Resolve, like Zoom session, and I was on it and Mark Wendell Geek was on it, and it might've been someone else on there. And that's really when I started like actually creating videos was after that, because like I could never get into like multi-track video editing. And again, there's a big time waste, but it's being inspired by others. And you were able to do that for me, of kind of like unlock my brain of like, okay, I see how you do it.
We said for like, if that guy can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, is what Ted's trying to tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, you're showing like using a reverse of water over an image to give it a creative look. I don't know. I just remember that. So, so anyway, your influence on that was helpful. And I know you've been talking to Tim a little bit.
A message a chat from Zach P. He says, I have been a creative musician all my life. And I then learned to be a teacher, then got a job in data analytics, then started to learn how to fly. Creativity is always the pulse to my learning.
Yeah.
And it's funny. It just happened as it was scrolling through Instagram, and there's so many musician pilots that have been popping up on my feed. So the lead singer of Bare Naked Ladies as a Cirrus pilot, but here's like 20 examples. There's a drummer for the Eagles cover band. I can't remember the name of them, but they travel all over the country. He flies an M600.
Kenny G is like he's a serious pilot. I think he owns a de Havilland Beaver.
Yeah.
Whoa. And he's also, I hear, one of the smoothest pilots.
Near Bob Hoover. Yeah.
That's too funny.
Oh, well, the other thing I wanted to just make sure we get out here real quick is just to say that if there's anything I would like people to walk away from hearing, listening to this podcast, what do I do with this? In the same way that you went on, chose to take on aviation, please, if you feel like, I don't know, I've never even painted before, but I'm just going to go send it and see what happens. Or I don't know. I just hope that it creates the impulse, the final turn in somebody's brain to start doing something that maybe they haven't done before. And it's totally fine to be terrible at it. And we have a channel in our Discord that is dedicated to all manner of creativity among all of the pilots in this group here, in this community. And, so some things will be very good. Some things will be experimental. Some things are just ideas. It doesn't matter. So if you're looking for a reason to get started and a no judgment zone to share some of these things, because we haven't even talked about, all the photography and just all of the other, the writing, and, you've got people as influential as, Richard Bach, or, people there's just so much poetry and Zen and philosophy and beauty and inspiration in the whole aviation world. And I think that what it comes down to, if I was to try to sum it up with anything else, I would just say that flying is a transcendent thing. It is something where you are outside of your dimensional normative reality and able to sense and feel things through a whole new lens, which is the most life-giving possible thing that you can have, I think, especially when you're getting midlife. It's like, okay, well, I've had a lot of chocolate milkshakes. I like them and I'm excited whenever I have a chocolate milkshake, but I've had this milkshake before. So anyway, instead of chocolate milkshakes, strap yourself to a death machine with barely any skills and see what happens, right? Yeah. Like, that's what we're here for.
Yes. Promoting safer flying, written by Brian Siskin.
And chocolate milk.
Yes.
Hey, I'm going to put a link in the doobly-doo for Kenny G on Social Flight YouTube channel.
Awesome.
He sits there and talks for an hour because he's an aviation nut. And like, seriously, so
we're all in good
awesome
company. Well, you guys are in good company. Me, not so much, but that's okay.
Yeah. Hey, Tim,
I'm a fly fisherman too, Ben. We'll go sometime. I'll tie some flies with you.
Oh, Lord.
Oh boy.
Be careful what you ask for is all I got to say.
I know a few good trout streams up in southeast Minnesota. Okay. You get here and I'll take you.
Be there in about 8 hours.
Tim, is there anything else you want to make sure you touch on before we cut out of here?
No, it's just a big thank you to you guys and to the community, because, it sounds cliche, but none of this would be here without you. And, throw back to the OG Chris too, because he's the one that brought me to the podcast in the first place. And here we are. And it's just an exciting ride. And it's awesome to be part of this community of people.
Awesome.
Absolutely. So we do appreciate you coming on. For everybody that's listening, go check out MyAeroGlass.com, MyAeroGlass.com. Yes, I spelled it out. Ted will have it linked in the show notes. I enjoyed this. I didn't know that I was going to have a lot to contribute, and I kind of didn't, but I did enjoy hanging out with you, Tim. It was great to see you again. So everybody that's in the chat, stay with us. We're going to be around for a little bit, but tonight's bit of wisdom, since we have two guys that are kind of in the midst of IFR training, I thought I would impart a little wisdom there. Flying IFR, it's where you trade scenery for stress. Signing off, episode 141 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Goodbye, everybody.